FM 90. Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very good evening to you, and thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum. We are coming to you live on Radio 1 FM 90, which is broadcasting from the heart of our city, Kampala, in the central building, which is the home of this radio station. But we're also coming to you live on the website, www.radio1fm90.com. While on that website, you click on the icon with the word Listen Live. This radio station is also live on the different radio listening apps, which can be obtained from the Google stores of your smartphone. Download any of those radio listening apps. Look for Radio 1 FM 90. And as long as you have an internet connection, you'll be able to listen to us. We are live on DSTV. Our audio channel there is 897. Two ways to contribute to this discussion. One of the ways is to send us a WhatsApp message using the WhatsApp line, which is 0703-090-090. The other option is actually to call in. When time comes, I'll open the line for you to actually do so. Today, we'll be continuing reflecting on the mini cabinet reshuffle and its implications. Well, today, 6 new state ministers were successfully vetted by Parliament, going by what we have seen on their social media handles. They were all happy and saying they had been successfully vetted, which implies they are now waiting to take oath in order to start superintending over their different dockets. Now, they include Kitgum District Woman MP Lilian Abe, who is now the State Minister in charge of Relief, Disaster Preparedness and Refugees. We have Dr. Kenneth Yomona, formerly the Principal Private Secretary to the President, who is now the State Minister in charge of Northern Uganda. We have Sironko District Woman MP Florence Nambozo Wamala, who is the State Minister in charge of Karamoja Affairs. National Youth MP Fiona Nyamtoro, who is the new State Minister in charge of Minerals. Balam Barugahare, the new State Minister for Youth and Children Affairs. And General Wilson Mbasu Mbadi, who is the new State Minister for Trade after being dropped from the position of Chief of Defense Forces. Now, all these changes came to light on Thursday night after President Yoweri Museveni surprised many by publishing what he called a slightly amended list of cabinet. In general, about 95% of the previous ministers were retained in their different positions. Now, hours that followed, President Yoweri Museveni also named his son, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, as the new Chief of Defense Forces. Now, this move has attracted different views, but the majority think that combined with the appointment of his friends, as many have called them as ministers, it's a one-way ticket to the presidency. President Yoweri Museveni dropped Vincent Bamlangaji Sempija from the docket of defense, and Dr. Mary Goretti Kitutu and Agnes Nandutu from their Karamoja dockets. He also that very night named senior presidential advisors, including Lydia Wanyoto Mtende, Harriet Ntabazi, who is the former State Minister of Trade, Grace Freedom Kwinyichunyi, formerly State Minister for Northern Uganda, and Vincent Sempija, who has been in the docket of defense. Join this discussion by sharing with us. Use the WhatsApp line. And as indicated, time allowing, I'll open the phone lines for you to actually weigh in. Now, different stakeholders have been responding. So today, I have 2 in studio. Mr. Harold Kaija, Secretary General at the FDC Katonga faction. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, my brother. I want to greet our fellow captives who listen to Radio 1 every day, and to wish you a good week, and even to
fellow captives.
We are in a land of captivity. What you're talking about never happens in a country where people were free people. So it's a country of captives. The captor will do whatever they want, and you're only there to salute and wait for a day that you'll get out of captivity. And also congratulate the people of Senegal, especially those who have been struggling to have their democracy on the line. I've seen people going on X, trying to congratulate them and saying in Uganda, it's whatever you're seeing in any part of the world, there are people who struggle to have it. We are in this kind of situation because we've decided this is where we want to be.
All right. The other panelist is Mr. Augustine Otuko, who is the private secretary to the President Yoweri Museveni, in charge of political affairs. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Otuko.
Good evening, Anderson. It's a pleasure coming back to this studio to share matters concerning our country. I want to greet the listeners out there and request them to participate. Thank you very much.
All right, well, we'll begin with you, Mr. Harold Kaija. You were tasked today to address the media, and one of the things in there, in the press release which you issued, was a reaction to the cabinet reshuffle.
Yeah, true.
What's the general feeling at Katonga?
Change the word from reshuffle to an amendment. That's a new word I've never seen.
Well, that's the same word that President Yoweri Museveni used.
It's a new terminology.
A mini amendment.
A mini amendment. Amendment, I always used it when we were discussing issues of constitutions. But now even what we call a cabinet has been amended. When you look at that cabinet, we are looking at it in about two ways. First of all, I want to give an analogy of a coach or a football manager. I'm a supporter of Manchester United. At halftime or in the second half, a manager looks at his team and the performance of the competitor. And then you say, if you don't have goals, you want to bring a fresh striker. If you feel the strikers are good and the midfield is lacking, you change the midfielder to create the goals. If you have enough goals and feel you're under pressure, you bring defenders. That has always been the mind, if I were to use the analogy of a manager. But then when you look at Mr. Museveni's amendment, you want to ask yourself, what was the goal of this kind of amendment? I want to interest myself on just one slot. The slot of trade. That's where I am.
All right.
Of trade. Trade kind, the URA gave us data indicating that business is actually almost collapsing. We're having 125 businesses that were making 100 billions per year. Those have reduced to 6. Those that were making 50 to 100 billion per year, which were 130, have reduced to 3. Those that were making 50 million to 500 million, we are 10,000, we have 1,000. Who is brought in trade? A general, a qualified general, a soldier by profession, from childhood to death, is the one that is being brought to trade to deal with this.
To enforce discipline.
Discipline. So
maybe there's a problem
So
there.
we need some shots, some bullets, some bazookas to see to it that we have this. So I've been looking at that. Because you look at the kind of situation we are in, how is the country moving so that you believe that they brought a new person to push an agenda. But you see, then we remember that Mr. Museveni, when he started of this term, he had a campaign slogan of securing your future. Then he said he had brought fishermen. Fishermen now I'm get him people to support him, not to have an agenda to pursue. We are also looking at it that when you really observe it, you see that now it has become a common norm that cabinet is the destination of any exiting chief of defense forces. General Saleh was in there. General Mount refused to get in there. Then they started with General Ronda. That one, as a serving officer, was put in a cabinet. Then General Katumba Wamala, General David Muhoozi, and now General Mbadi. Soldiers who are known, yet we say soldiers are not supposed to engage in politics. Now, in a way that we have been told that soldiers fix everything. When we had the potholes in Kampala, they brought soldiers. We saw them in Nambole. We are told if when the doctors were demonstrating, they would bring soldiers to fix them. So everywhere, so gradually, Uganda is being militarized is democracy being militarized? Different from what we had been told, that possibly we are going democracy. Then the other thing that you would see in that amendment is Mr. Museveni wanting to deflate the activities of his son, who was moving around, wanting to appear competing with him. For us who have studied Mr. Museveni, wouldn't want anybody to replace him when he's still alive. He wants you to sort yourself when he's gone. So he said, okay, young man, come and be in charge of my security. Become CDF. Who are your friends? Baram, Nyamtoro, Abel, bring them in to sit there. So that now they have shifted allegiance to their former friend. Now they have another boss. I think since then you are not hearing this Pilau thing moving around. So now to say now to refocus his energies in surviving 2026. Those, if you've been moving around, you realize that he went and launched the register of the NRM. I moved to routes, one to Gulu, another one to Busia. I hardly met any place where they were registering and found there 4 people waiting. In most places, you find the registrar seated just there, if he has a smartphone, checking through. So I think he must have seen that the activities of his son were dividing the loyalty of his supporters. So he wanted to galvanize supporters and put them, and they say, no, guys, wait a minute. In Africa, they only replace you when you're actually dead. I saw that, but I do not see a cabinet tailored to address the issues of me and you. No, it is tailored to secure the future of Mr. Museveni, his family, and his generations to come, until the people of Uganda also decide otherwise. And it is, naturally, that is what would go to his head.
All right.
So he's actually telling Ugandans, hey, mind your business.
All right. Let's hear from Mr. Otuko, probably who could have known what was coming, because he works closely with President's office where he is in charge of political affairs. Mr. Otuko, you heard from Harold Kaija, your mirror, the other side. What's your take on this amended cabinet?
I think the word amendment or reshuffle is a word that can be debated. But in the event that you remove some people from the list and you're bringing new ones, I think it qualifies to be an amendment, because you are simply getting some people out and bringing others in. Well, I think the idea on whether this cabinet tends to address the new changes, tend to address the concerns of the people or not, needs to be understood carefully. When you look at the concerns of the people, first of all, when you look at the new people coming in, you realize that the majority of them are young. When you have Abe, you have Nyamtoro, you have Nambozo, you have Omona. These are people who are not yet at 50s or 60s. On average, they could be about 40 years. This is trying to respond to the concerns of the young people, because if you are scientific enough in leadership, you must be able to identify people who resonate with the concerns that come from the community. When you look at the issue of trade, for example, what he has talked about, the general that he's talking about is not necessarily somebody who is only knowledgeable in military. This is somebody who graduated with a master's in strategic studies. And in terms of strategic studies, is one of the courses that we have in business administration. When I was doing business administration, there was one course talking about strategic management. So ideally, once you're a manager, you must be of good intent, of good capability and responsibility to be able to run an organization. But also, having been somebody who has been around and more senior in rank, for that matter, he's been able to see and appreciate and be able to, somebody who has risen through the ranks and ran the institution of the UPDF from the time he was an aide up to now, it's a clear sign that he's been able to progress. And we've seen soldiers being deployed in different areas and have extremely excelled. It doesn't mean that once somebody is a soldier, he does not have the capability to manage. On the other hand, you have a person like Abe and Balaam who have been directly involved in the mobilization of PLU. We have also seen their abilities in these areas resonating with the young people, mobilizing them for their pressure group called PLU. And from that, it's evident enough that they have the ability to be able to mobilize young people. So maybe the president, if I try to read his mind, is trying to say these young people, Balaam and Nyamtoro and Abe, should translate the energy they have been using in mobilizing people for MK activities or for PLU into transforming the country. If we could use that energy to be able to transform the needs of the people. For example, Abe, who is into disaster management, how best can she use the same energy she was using in PLU to ensure that we are responsive enough in dealing with the disaster challenges, so that we are prepared enough to be able to be dealing with some of these issues. When you look at Nyamtoro comes from a region that is West Nile. West Nile, if you've been following the politics, has somehow been infiltrated by opposition. And when you look at the leaders of, most especially NOP, the leaders of NOP in West Nile, these are young people. So if I am a head of state and I want to respond to the concerns and the challenges and the political challenges in such a specific region, I would pick a young person to resonate with those kind of challenges.
So Harold Kaja is right to say that these appointments are merely political. They are not about delivering what Ugandans expect.
Because you cannot talk about delivering without...
Because Honorable Nyamtoro that we are talking about, he is the new state minister in charge of minerals.
Yes. Well, maybe you have interjected before I completed, because the point I was making is that first of all, we must all agree that once you're in power, much as you're delivering services, you also have interest. It is not a hidden fact. You have interest to retain power. So as you are delivering services, you are doing so, but behind your mind, you also know you have an interest to retain power, either for you as an individual who is in power, or for your group or a political party for that matter that you lead. So in that reason, therefore, much as Nyamtoro is going to deal with the issues of minerals in the country, we must also be aware that this is a political office. This is a political appointment. At the end of it all, she must deliver for the service, but importantly, politically, she must be very responsive. So I think when I look at that, then the last maybe person I would cite is my personal friend, Dr. Kenneth Omona. When you look at Omona carefully, this is a medical doctor, but with a master's in business administration. He has been in the NRM ranks over time. He has been very instrumental in mobilizing the party from around 2014 until when he got appointed as a PPS. So his elevation to a ministerial position from a permanent secretary is a sign that maybe going forward, the president would want to use his energy in transforming in dealing with the challenges in northern Uganda. Because when you look at the northern Uganda, for example, there is an issue of NUSAF. There were a lot of concerns about corruption in NUSAF. There was also an issue of PRDP in the northern part of the country. Then very recently, the question of land, the land questions that have been a very heated debate arising from the invasion of the Balalo. I remember we discussed that issue here. So I believe maybe the president has felt that he needs somebody who understands his mind in dealing with the challenges of the people, the land question, the issue of the recovery program, but also most importantly, NUSAF. So in my view, these slight changes, as the President calls it, are geared towards addressing the immediate concerns the President has been able to identify.
Well, Arod, you had it there. Why are you insisting that these people are not going to do any service delivery? They're not going to change anything, despite their roles in cabinet? Because your colleague here seems to suggest that there are an infusion of new energy, probably to lead to another direction, mobilize young people into production, mobilize young people into supporting the government activities, etc.
No, you see, there's what defeats my mind. And I've always told colleagues that Mr. Museveni is not interested in those affirmative groups. You bring Nyamutoro, who is MP for the youth, but do not put him in the docket of the youth. And put him in, you don't put her in the docket of the youth and put her in the docket of minerals. Yet, her docket is the youth. Then you bring an expert in mobilizing people to come and watch his show and the like, and is put in gender. So the way people are placed, they're not placed, Omona, medical doctor, thrown into the, northern Uganda, to start now. I am telling you, when you are doing substitution in management, in football, in the rest, when you are chasing time, you bring somebody who's tested to fix a problem. But when you look at the list of people, because an amendment is an improvement, which area has been improved? We must ask. Okay, well, I must feel it. I must touch the area that has been that has been improved. I basically see no area that has been improved. It is a matter of trying to, you're on a chessboard, trying to change the cons, to suit your own interests. I think it's the reason even why we basically, even when we actually have a transition in this country, to have term limits. Because we've seen in countries where there are term limits, the last term of the president is a term when he brings his best to leave a legacy. And say, you put your best in agriculture, the person who owns agriculture, you put your best in trade, you put your best in finance, you put your best in defense, you put your best in education, and all of those sectors. We've had a lot of noise about education. Has it been touched? No change. You've had issues in agriculture, even foreign production of even coffee, our best. Because this would be time somebody must account. But you see, we are now in a country where a head of state in the past would come and sit and tell you the list of people that he has appointed. In other countries, they even profile them. That I'm bringing Kenneth Lukwago to become Minister of Information. Kenneth Lukwago studied journalism. Kenneth Lukwago has been in journalism for the last 20 years. Kenneth Lukwago has improved the program he was given this program, he did ABCD. There are even those tangible yardsticks that we feel like, yes, this is the guy for the job. But you see, there are even now names that people just heard. Now you saw, when the name of Baram came in, the whole discussion was on his T-shirt. If that tells you the cycle of our people. Because they were never told why he's in that office. Now we only assume even the presidential advisor. I think when we find ourselves in that situation of thinking, it means that we have a head of state who works solo. As you know, he has always been a singular candidate. Is it called, how they call him, solo candidate? So he thinks solo. He thinks alone, makes his decisions, and is pride about it. If you had here a vice chairperson of NRM, a secretary general of NRM, they can never account for why ABCD was put in any kind of position. And that is a disaster for the country. In all countries followed, even these Kenyans, Tanzanians, they profile, they tell you, so and so has been put in this docket for this. So this is what we expect. Now we are here assuming. For him, he has his cards, head on his chest. Even remember, when he had an agreement with Chairman Mao. Chairman was saying, I've gone to cabinet for this. The big man goes and sits with the media. No, that was different from what we set out to do. So that tells you, it is about giving people a chance to eat. And the way he's doing his things, we are bastardizing cabinet, whereby anybody from nowhere without even thinking about it, find themselves in cabinet. So now it is no longer the pride of somebody being in a cabinet. Now I don't even know who was removed from trade, Harmony Learning. I won't suspect she's even an MP. I don't know how an MP becomes a presidential advisor, that God knows. So even before you understand who is in the place, somebody has left. So at the end of the day, he doesn't allow someone to grow in a position to accumulate the necessary experience, the expertise to give the services we need. Mr. Museveni, at the time now he has spent in this country, would have serious people in positions, say ABCD, and guys who have confidence. You see one thing about technical people, when you come as a novice, they'll treat you the way you come. All right,
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. We need to go for a break now. When we return, we will hear deeply about this cabinet. Kaija suggests that most of those people who are there do not have experience. We will be hearing from Otuko. But we also want to get this discussion deeper. There are people actually saying he could have done better by cutting down on the number of cabinet, but also avoid appointing MPs as ministers. Let's go for a break. When we return, we'll weigh into those issues to understand how we can make our cabinet tick going forward. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. We'll continue after this break.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Your host, Harold Kaija, Secretary General, the FDC Katonga faction, and Mr. Augustine Otuko, Private Secretary. Surprised 5% of ministers retained their positions. We only saw new 6 faces coming in. And general to the presidential race in 2026. Mr. Otuko, we had it there that most of these people are not going to perform. Generally speaking, about 95%, they have not performed where they have been. The rationale of actually retaining them there, I think it should have cut down on the number of ministers because of the challenges the country faces now. But also, others say, appointing MPs to serve as ministers.
Well, maybe before I answer that, Comrade Anderson, I just wanted to allay the fears of my brother Kaija on the placement. If you look at the CV of Balaam, sometimes I think when you go down and look at who is Balaam? Balaam was actually a student in Makerere University Business School where I studied, and he did a bachelor's in commerce. Mm-hmm. But he also has a master's. When you look at his CV, he has a master's in
not MBA.
No, I think it's not.
He has a master's.
He has a master's degree.
We know not so long ago we saw him graduating.
Yes, he has a master's degree, but also we know that he is a music promoter. On top of that, all his activities are associated with young people. So when you look at that and look at where does Balaam exactly fit, you actually appreciate the fact that Balaam was well placed. Because when you talk about issues of artisans in Uganda, the musicians, the young people, the sports, the people involved in so many activities, the creativity and so on. You're going to deal with the young people.
He has a master's of business administration.
Yes, he has a master's of business administration. So you realize that Balaam, in terms of academia, is highly qualified to be a minister. We can actually debate maybe about in terms of experience. But you know, this is a businessman who has run several businesses from South Sudan up to Uganda. He deals in business in Kampala. It's also outside Kampala, in Hoima, Masindi, and so many other places.
And the question is, how does that help young people?
No, I mean, when you're dealing, that's what I'm saying, we can debate in terms of experience. But in terms of qualification, he is highly qualified and is well placed because he has been placed in an area where he's going to express his talent. You're dealing with musicians under Ministry of Gender, you're dealing with young people and so many other people. So I think in terms of placement, he has been placed well. We can debate in terms of does he in terms of experience, is he going to be able to run this? And I would also say yes, because if you've been able to run multi-billion projects as an individual, you have your own multi-billion projects. I think you can be able to address and run this ministry. But of course, as a political head, you're not the one running the ministry. In all these ministries, we have commissioners, we have directors, we have technical people who will always be guiding him on how to run the affairs of the ministry. And I think, in my opinion, he qualifies. And also, when you look at, for example, Abe, just to allay the fears of the listeners, Abe has a master's in business administration with a bias in oil and gas. And when you look at that, you actually realize that in terms of academics, much as these people are young, they highly qualify. But also, when you look at the history of Abe's leadership, she was the president of UNSA. She became the National Youth Council chairperson. She ran the Youth Council very well. During our time, we never had incidences. But also, after the National Youth Council, she directly went for directly elected. She went for political position in Pade. So I think in terms of ability to lead, by the time Abe was able to lead us, because she was our leader at that time when she was a youth council chairperson and I was the chairperson of Katakwi, she ran the race well, because that's the time we had the youth livelihood program, and across the country we were able to see different projects being taken by the youth and transforming themselves. But also she served as a presidential advisor. And
somebody would say maybe she was the one suited for the job of youth minister. Maybe.
Yes. Well, I mean,
somebody who has already experienced in that area should be the one to take up the docket.
I mean, yes and no. Why? Because when you look at Nyamtoro is the current leader of the young people.
Very fresh.
We would also say she's the one.
CV does not,
but also
her CV does not compare with Lydian Aber when it comes to youth issues, going by what the explanation is given.
Yes. But also when you look at Balaam, his area for the last 5-10 years, for me, who has been working with Balaam under NRM, has been dealing with young people. Right. He has been dealing with artists and so many other young people, young talent, getting young people to record.
You have emphasized that already.
So I think it's important. So on the issue of whether we should have ministers, a lean cabinet, but also have ministers being picked from parliament or
outside parliament.
Well, I think, in my opinion, for a long time, I have also been one of those who believes that there is need for us to amend our law. Because when you look at the confusion and the friction and the fighting in NRM in different parts of this country, it is geared towards competition for ministerial positions. And once you have these MPs competing and fighting each other, and because each of them wants to be seen, wants the other to fail,
to be the supremo in the region,
so that they remain supreme. That has affected service delivery, but also affected the political cohesion within the NRM as a political party. And I think if such proposals are brought to the Ugandans, I'm not very sure of Parliament, right, but I think if such proposals are brought, I will be one of them who will support.
Harold, what would be your position on that?
No, but you see, I think you've seen me write about it, talk about it. I believe in a lean government. Even a standard classroom is not as big as Mr. Museveni's cabinet. A standard classroom by UN standards is about 40 to one teacher to 40 kids. When you have 80 or so, they are not actually ministers. It is about getting doing your politics. When you talk about not having ministers outside Parliament, I also agree with you. I and my colleagues, we have spoken highly about it, that if you want to have a competent Parliament and even reduce the money that people use to go to Parliament, to get parliamentary seats, is that you start getting ministers outside Parliament. That even makes Parliament strong. That makes even Parliament independent. But then today, Mr. Museveni in his cabinet, he always keeps about 2-3 seats vacant. So they use them to every MP. You know, when you behave well, this seat is yours. When you behave well, this seat is yours. That is what they do. So at the end of the day, every MP goes to the constituency, not to become an MP, but one route to go to cabinet. In the book of Maria Matembe, I'm forgetting
the title,
Democrats and something, betrayed, something of the sort. She talks about 2001, when she was being pushed out of Mbarara. She spoke to him, said, you see, I am aware when you're an MP and minister, you can never be effective in the constituency. He said it. And said, if you know it, why do you still have MPs as ministers? Now we are prepared. Every MP is now spending most of his or her time in the constituency. Now you are bringing new kids on the block who have constituencies. Are they going to be effective with their new ministries when their minds are about the next election? My answer is no, they're not going to be effective. So actually this time around, any sober or a person who loves this country, one, as you said, we should have reduced the number of ministers. Two, you should have appointed people or individuals, experts who are outside Parliament, technical people, tested people. They are people. Casita people would even give you a very good person to go and sit in trade. They appreciate the play they're going through. You go to gender. You would even pick somebody from the school of gender. Bring that person who has been, these people who are promoters of gender issues. Say, guys, come and give a hand.
There are also many in civil society.
Yeah, and that's the docket I'm talking about. Put them in. But as I told you, Mr. Museveni's persuasion and mission is different from what we are pursuing. We have ideas of Uganda we want, and also has his own ideas. But currently, as the late Moi said, that as we proceed, Mr. Museveni keeps around, all his time and resources of Uganda will be used to keep him in power. So he'll be preoccupied in surviving the next day. So anybody who will add, that's why you had the CVs, the regime was giving you. You would see the person who has a bias in an MBA bias in oil would be going for mineral resources. That person was not put there. Those would, so you would find, and I think it is that's the way Mr. Museveni operates.
All right.
He will never put you in a docket where he feels you're going to call it my lecture is to call it chicken feeds. He wants you to feel it is a rock.
All right.
And a political leader, I must say, must give direction.
All right.
If you're going to depend on the advisors all the time, because advisor will give you advice and many options, but you are the person who must make the last decision.
All right.
If you're green, you're finished.
All right. Mr. Tuko, the other aspect that came in was the naming of the 4 new presidential advisors. The list is now long. In the past, we had that these people even sometimes don't get to meet the president. What's the value of having people who some people think have failed to perform elsewhere becoming the advisors? I mean, if you're moving me from the docket, how can I become your advisor? It means I've failed the other side.
Well, it depends, because we must understand the underlying factors why the person has been moved. It may not necessarily be that you have failed. you could have actually excelled highly, and they want you to give more advice on how to run that that department. So it depends.
Look at the list.
Yes, it depends. But when you look at when you say the advisors do not meet the president, they don't necessarily have to meet the president. Presidency is a very complex institution. So you have if you have ideas that you feel, you do not necessarily have to meet the president and converse about them. We have to write. Most of these presidential advisors, when you have ideas, they have written to the president, and the president has responded on what his opinion is on most of these things. So I think the idea that, of course, some of them get to meet him, but you cannot meet all of them, because you have various sectors of the economy and these people could be experts in some of these areas, and they have written to the president. I will give you an example. During the COVID period, how did the president run government? Most of these ideas on what scientific studies about COVID and the virus and so on were written to him, and he was able to read and appreciate. Where he had questions, he was able to write back and ask what it was. So I think it's important to appreciate that under presidency you may not be able to meet everybody, but you can be able to communicate through different channels.
No, but you see, I want to add
on the advisors.
Yes, on the advisors. Why do you have advisors? You get advisors depending on the need. But the way we are seeing it, it is one way of like, I am throwing you out of cabinet, but I don't want to lose your constituency. Put him somewhere, give him a vehicle, because their followers want to see red number plates. The bulk of our advisors, they are not needed. And you hear, see, this one advisor on Uncle House, cattle, specifically, not even on cattle, Uncle Cattle advise on this. You remember when this woman who contested for presidency, who was made an advisor, who was removed from FDC, who was picked from FDC, who became an advisor on Bosoga affairs, the kind of advisor Mr. Msele picks, it's about politicking, as I told you. They are actually, I am told, Mr. Museveni's advisors are not those that you saw on the payroll. Mr. Museveni's advisors are very different from those. From Dr. Samson Seka to now the current one, they will always tell you, you can't see him, you can't press a call and he picks, you write, nobody will respond to you. And they have happened. It's about giving colleagues, you don't want to annoy them, to keep them appeased. It's an appeasement kind of policy. I think which must stop. You must have advisors. You see advisors in other countries, serious men of integrity, men of high profile in the dockets they are given. But here somebody, you go at a funeral, they tell you, so and so is the president's advisor. All right. Advise on what? Right. You actually can.
Well, maybe let me give you.
Let me read out these comments and then you respond to them and also respond to Harold Kaija. We have comments coming in from the listeners. I'll begin with Stephen Rutaro, who says, "Dear Radio One, sometimes I wonder why we even discuss Museveni issues on radio. The man does whatever he chooses because Ugandans gave him a blank check to do whatever he wants. Let Nyamtoro and Balam also eat." That's Stephen Rutaro there with that comment. Then we have another one which comes in from Georgie Niganga, who says, "Nobody should expect anything new from these new ministers. Being a minister excites everyone. That is why those groups are excited. Just having youthful ministers should not make any youth feel their challenges are sorted. As youth and children, our challenges are very many." That's George in Iganga with that comment. We have another comment coming in here. Good evening, Spectrum. Thanks for the show. I believe that the president verified these new ministers before appointing them. That is how it's done in every part of Africa. Why debating on it now? Will all this debate change anything? This is NRM time. Let's give them our support for a good job in our nation. That's Anthony listening in from Kibuli with that comment. We have another one, Samuel Merriga, listening in from Namlondo Zone in Boyogere. It says, "Mr. Kenneth, thanks for the show. Sincerely speaking, I agree with Mr. Kaija. A minister should not have been a sitting member of parliament. On Balam's case, I think he's more fit to be a gender and youth minister because he has been carrying out activities involving youth for so long. That's a comment from Samuel Mary Yiga there. Now, gentlemen, as we come towards the end of this show, I'll give you an opportunity to respond. I begin with you, Mr. Tuko. You had a direct response for Kaija.
Well, I just want to give an example to my brother Kaija. When Mzee Ezra Suruma was made a presidential advisor after serving as a minister for finance, many people laughed at him. But when he went and did a study in China and several Asian countries and borrowed a model called the Parish Development Model, it was actually his idea that was presented in Ichobe around 2019. He came, there was a retreat, and the president communicated to the SEC members that there was a presidential advisor by the names of Ezra Suruma who had a paper to present. And when this paper was, when the agenda of SEC was amended, Mzee Ezra Suruma presented his paper, the concept he called the Parish Development Model. Today, the country is talking about the Parish Development Model, but many people do not know that it actually came from a presidential advisor. So I think the point I'm making is that we may not be able to see physically what the presidential advisors are doing, but picking from what Ezra Suruma has done, today we are busy, every parish is having beneficiaries and is hoping to benefit from a parish development model, which was idea that was presented but later on modified to by some other experts to serve the people of Uganda. So I think the point I made earlier is that the presidential advisors are necessary because some of these people have expertise in specific areas that others may not have. And once they continue advising the president on specific areas, then such ideas will eventually find their way either into the political organs of the party or they will find their way into government budgeting processes. And these become programs that change government. On the issue of these appointments, I want to say that these are political appointments. Government is run 90% by the technical people. Those of Baram and Nyamtoro are specifically going to be guided by the already existing rules and procedures within the public service of Uganda. So basically what I am saying is that the leaders who have been appointed clearly qualify academically. In terms of their expertise, they qualify, and I believe going to the future, they will be able to serve the interests of the people.
Harold.
Yeah, thank you so much. He brought in an example, a very good example of Dr. Ezra Suruma and his PDM.
Yes.
Anderson, look for Ezra Suruma and bring him here. The PDM he talked about is not the PDM we are having. He was actually talking about serious development in a parish and even a pilot them. Not the thing of giving out money. Why is Ezra Suruma the shortest, the person who has been in ministry for the shortest period of time? Because he was bringing ideas which are not popular to the president. He talked about not selling UCB. UCB was sold. I told you not to annoy his constituency. So put him as an advisor. But if you went and spoke to him, the kind of parish model was talking about, and I know you, I'm sure you know it. It's not that the one we are having it. We are having. If you discuss with him, he feels a little disappointed. So when answering our colleagues who are, I want to thank them for participating. Somebody thinks that Balam has been working with the youth. He has not been working with the youth. He
has been attracting the youth.
Attracting.
And therefore, he can be a good mobilizer to transform their life. But you
see, when we are talking about gender, we are talking about empowerment. If you had been in the civil society, this guy is teaching them this, teaching them that. But for you are only calling them to come and give you money. That has been able to attract them to come and spend their money. But now we are talking about a person who will be in charge of empowering our youth to be able to be productive, to be able to think positively, and be able to be the responsible citizen. That is something different. And somebody told me we shouldn't talk about Mr. Museveni's cabinet. Yes,
it's NRM time. They do as they like.
Yes, but you see, as he says, but we are in this country. Any damage that happens to this country, me and him will pay more than those who are in charge.
All right. I'm afraid time is not our very best ally. You have a final word?
Yeah, well, on the proposal Kaija says he has been writing about, we should be able to appreciate that, yes, the Constitution gives the President the power, and it is guiding him. This Constitution was made with a wider consultation in 1995. Maybe going forward to the future, Ugandans need to have a conversation whether this constitution should continue holding, and if we want those kind of changes that he has proposed, then we should be able to start talking about maybe a possibility of a new constitution that can build a new consensus going forward after this number of years.
All right, with that, we come to the end of Spectrum. Thank you very much, dear guests, for
Happy
making
Easter.
time to be with us. Thank you very much, dear listeners, for tuning in and also contributing to this discussion. I've been your host, Kenneth Lukwagandason. Up next, we have the news in English with Miss Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, we'll have the Soul Train with BB Jr.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. Brought to you